But I had to go to the bathroom, so okay. Get this party started. Welcome to the Bonnet Chronicles, y'all. I am your hostess, Kalari GXE, aka Kalari Gamer Chick. It is November and we are close to the holiday season. It's been a wild ride this week. There's so much to talk about. But tonight's topic is point blank. We got to navigate these negative narratives. There are a lot of negative narratives as well, even though Virginia is still the talk of everybody because Republicans seemingly won the election there were plenty of races where independents and Democrats won. But that doesn't help the narrative that somehow we're going to keep losing to the death cult. So I need people to start realizing who they're getting their information from and processing this the proper way, because there are people that profit off of chaos. And there are a lot of people right now that want us to be back where we were last year with the incompetent administration running us into the ground. Why? Because fear sells, because death sells. And that's what we had last year. We have stability now, and every single article that I've seen from even people that I used to respect have been negative. Oh, the Dems aren't doing enough. It's been 9 months. Why haven't they given us the moon, the sky, and everything we want, and then some? They forget that we've had 4 years of fuckery, 4 years of global destabilization, social, on the home and domestic front, destabilization. We have a fucking global pandemic that we're still dealing with. But people want to say, oh, the Build Back Better plan doesn't have enough stuff for me. They had to take some stuff out because I don't understand basic civics or negotiation. They should just be able to do what they want. That's a dictatorship. And some of you are showing every day in real time on social media that you don't understand basic civics. We don't elect the emperor. You can't just get everything you want. There are checks and balances. And if you want climate change focus, you've got to elect people who believe in climate change. And I'm sorry, nobody that's currently running under the death cult, aka the fucking GOP, believes in science or climate change or civil rights. You women who want to go on protest and do your little pink hat marches because of what's going on in Texas, realize that Texas just lost another Democratic seat because some of y'all play the part of ally, but you're not real allies. All that organizing you did to look at me with a protest sign for women's rights didn't translate to organizing, getting people to the ballot. And that's a problem that too many of y'all don't want to face. But you got to, because all of these stunts, all of these photo opportunities are getting us nowhere. I started to realize that as I got older, and protests changed over the years. I grew up with people who had to protest, grandparents who had hoses and dogs turned on them because their civil rights to exist as American human beings was constantly under threat. My grandfather went to fucking war, fought Nazis, and had to come home to a place that told him where he could sit on a bus and what entrance he could come into in movie theaters, restaurants, if he was lucky to get served in them. So, yeah, protesting in that vein had to happen because it was the only thing they had at the time. Having LBJ finally sign the Voter Protection Act, having LBJ finally do some of the things that we take for granted, took a lot of arrest, beatings, risking their lives and limb. That's what the protests were about. Nowadays, protests are just stunts. Good evening and welcome to the chat, Respect. And I'm not saying this to take from people who feel like that's the only thing they can do is to get out into the street. As a black woman, knowing that my life is constantly at risk, my son's life's at risk, there are plenty of people who look like me, can't even live our best Black lives. I understand why some people still feel the need to march and yell and protest. But you know what would be more effective at this point? You take that energy if you're 18 years and older and fucking fill out a ballot. Because if you want the police to be reformed so that they can stop seeing us and acting like judge, jury, and executioner, you need to elect officials that will hold them accountable. And some of you don't even realize that we elect judicial officials. It's okay. That's all right, respect. Don't worry about it. And the thing that I don't think people understand is for all your protests going down to Texas to hold another women's march, you're still not doing what Texas women need you to do because they're not going to do it on their own. And you can't depend on just Black women to do that. I tell people all the time because people have been on me all week about coming hard for white women. But they are the demographic that are the most nonsensical in this equation. You're constantly voting against your own best self-interest. You wait until you lose rights that you shouldn't have lost in the first fucking place before you go, oh, I've got to stand up. I've got to protest. Instead of going, I need to organize. I need to get the motherfucker out who thought it was okay to legislate against my body. And I need to make sure that they never hold office again. And you will do cutesy things like vote like Black women in the hashtag and put in your bio, but don't take the fucking 5 minutes to collect your cousins and your friends to get to the polls. Because all that stunting, all these protests don't mean shit if we still got shit people in legislative positions. You want change. You demand it from the federal level, not realizing that if the state level ain't doing their jobs, there's only so much a president can do because he's a president, not an emperor. And some of you don't want to hear it because you think you're going to be okay no matter what. You have that privilege and that adjacency to white patriarchy, so you think, oh, well, I'll be fine. But we have seen just in the last year alone, just this year alone, how many women have gone missing, have been murdered. Gabby Petito, that was all over the news. They're still talking about her situation. Her situation could have been helped, but it's not because they raised white women to take that shit. You get told that it doesn't matter. Your adjacency to that fuckery will be enough to protect you, but it doesn't. And it shouldn't take a young woman who is just trying to travel blog with her boyfriend ending up dead because he's emotionally unadjusted. I tell people all the time, if they really broke down the psychology of being white in America, you would open a Pandora's box to so much unbalance because white men feel pressure to achieve a goal that some of them can't live up to, and then that makes them angry. They're told they can't show any other emotion, so that's all they channel. And then they hurt the people around them. White women are told you got to coddle them. You are raised from the cradle to believe that your place is behind the man, that you could never do it on your own. And that's why they get so mad at independent white women who are LGBT, because they are trained to believe that their only place is to take care of these men who barely take care of themselves. And it's not sustainable, y'all. So when I called them out this week, and I know I got a lot of trolls, some of them were really, really reaching. And I'm glad you wasted your time introducing yourself to my block bin. I made it clear that my social media is no longer going to be feeding y'all's egos. I don't search for you, so obviously what I said hit a nerve. I'm glad you decided to waste the few moments you could interact with me to show me you're not worth my time. That is how I'm going to treat people online from now on. I'm not going to argue with these people. Welcome to the chat, G. Feldman. I'm not going to give them my time and attention. There is too much at stake. And Virginia is being lauded by the media as, well, that's it. Dems are going to lose. White supremacy is going to reign supreme. And the reason they believe that is because too many of y'all are being fucking complacent right now. You think, oh, we got the big win and that's all that matters. And you got to get out of that mentality. It didn't matter where I lived in this country. I always re registered to vote, made sure that all my stuff was together, and voted. Yeah, there were plenty of times where I felt like I'm tired. I don't really want to do this. And there were times where I voted and it still didn't matter because the person I voted for just didn't get enough votes, but it doesn't stop me from doing my basic civic duties. And now that I live in a state where I got mail in ballots, there is absolutely no excuse not to vote. Some of you have it that easy and you still won't do your basic civic duties, but you'll hem and haw about stuff not being done. What about climate change? What about civil rights? What about the voters' rights bill? What about what's going on with these abortion bans? If you really gave a fuck about that, instead of bitching online, you be phone banking, even in states you don't live in. You be text banking and phone banking makes you uncomfortable. You be canvassing if you're more extroverted and vaccinated. If you really cared about the state of what's going on and feared men like Abbott controlling everywhere, if you were worried about West Virginia for some reason, you would be doing your part to ensure that people got to the ballot. There are plenty of black women I know who, like me, organize, who make sure that people know when to vote, how to vote. There are sites like Ballotpedia, which I stay on. That's how I knew people were blowing up Virginia, ignoring that Boston got their first Asian female, is she governor or mayor? Let me double check this, mayoral campaign. A Democrat in a state where Democrats don't always have it easy in Massachusetts. I have family from Massachusetts, and I can tell you, as a former New Yorker, I ain't bothered with that place because they have a lot of benign bigots. They will smile in your face and then call you the N word and be like, "What? You want to fight about it?" And I'm not acting like New York's any better. That's the problem people have with our country. They seem to think, oh, it's New York. It's a melting pot. There can't be racism there. Howard Beach was one of the incidents that stuck in my mind as a kid because I was young when that incident happened. These kids were, I think, going to check on a bike or a car and got beat to death by a bunch of Italian youth. And that was on top of another couple. One of them happened to be the father of my best friend who was with his white wife at the beach, minding their own business, and got jumped and attacked. So for people to act like racism doesn't happen in the melting pot in New York, it does. When I was 14 years old, I remember coming home from school, just not a care in the world normally. I had some stuff happen to me a few months back that I thought when I seen the detective in my house, maybe somebody confessed to what happened to me. No. On top of the trauma of what happened that summer, I got the shock in the fall of a cop asking me, did I know my neighbor? My brain was like, oh no, why? Because at this point in my life, even at 14, I knew there were adults who did things that they weren't supposed to do. And I was like, is this neighbor doing something illegal? I don't know nothing. I don't want to know nothing. No, come to find out, he legit wanted to firebomb my family out of the house because he didn't want our kind in his neighborhood. So for those of you who want to act like racism only happens in the deep south, y'all need to save it. Yeah, political wise, the South isn't looking good right now. You've got Deaf Santis in Florida. You've got freaking Handmaiden Tales going on in Texas. You've got laws trying to target the LGBTQ in Arkansas. But America in whole gets a bad report card for the way they act with racism. And like I had to tell somebody this weekend when they asked us on our Gen X Cynics cast about America and the stuff that they report overseas about our country. We are 50 states just trying to coexist. We are not a real United States. We are one nation in principle. We call ourselves America, but we are 50 individual states just trying to coexist. It is like having a house with 50 different people of different backgrounds and ideas and cultures trying to live under one big house. You're going to have issues. So when I get people from across the pond, it's like, oh, why can't you just solve things? Okay. Why can't you just solve things in Europe then? Aren't you all just one nation? Oh, that's ignorant. It's ignorant to think that America could just handle all of our stuff as one nation because we're not like that. We are not just one sovereign landmass. And we did that to stop us from becoming a dictatorship. That is why it is so important for you to elect competent state and local electives. But some of you want to play games. You elect Instagram influencers to important positions. And then they take their platform and instead of encouraging votes, they give people excuses to stay home because they want that destabilization. The goal of people like the Justice Dems and so-called independents like Yang and people who really don't care about actual progress is the destabilization because then they can swoop in, get a cushy job, negotiate deals with shady people, and we're fucked. And I'm tired of seeing this shit play out. We have competent politicians that have set a standard that we should be electing more of, like Lauren Underwood and Lucy McBath, Sharice Davis, to name my favorite three off the top of my head. And I know there are plenty more out there that just want to get the job done, that can legislate. But more people talk about white boy Wilma. You know who I'm referring to because she gets on BuzzFeed doing little tutorials to the oil companies. I get that you want to school people on how the oil companies are screwing us over. But how about drafting some fucking legislation so that they can pay their fair share and stop fucking up our environment? Oh no, that's too hard. You would much rather make a name for yourself doing these stunts. And to bring it back to white women, there are far too many of you who do these stunts because for you, looking the part while you still stay in societal safety is your jam. You're not willing to make the painful changes that some are. And then you get mad at the ones who are, the ones who know that being anti-racist is a lifetime gig and it's a lot of work. And you might mess up and step in it, but you're willing to do it whether somebody's looking or whether they're not looking because the goal is to have one less racist in this world. They're not doing it to get a pat on the head. They're not doing it for a cookie. Another thing about anti-racists is they actually have black friends online and offline, and they're not afraid to hear the real from us. And that's the thing with black women. We are tired of hearing about y'all's feelings because when I talk to other black women, I can talk to them. I can real talk to them. They might not like everything I have to say. We might not even stay friends after it, depending on how hurt their feelings get. And the same with me. But we can do that. White women, y'all act like you want to be down with the sisterhood, but the moment you start feeling uncomfortable, the moment your feet are put to the emotional fire of having to self-reflect, some of the things that you okay, some of the things you didn't press on, the fact that half of you in less than about 2 weeks from now will be sitting across from relatives you know voted for that disaster and would vote for him again, but you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to shake things up. You don't want to separate yourself from toxic because it's all about that fake front. And for real beans, and welcome to Chad Deer. I need white people to understand that calling you out has been a long time coming. And anybody telling me at this point that, oh, it's not the way to reach them, stop it. I'm sick of this. They need to understand the roles that they're playing in our destabilization because it's not clear to them as they bombard school boards talking about CRT. We can't have our kids learning CRT. It'll make them hate themselves. And it's like, grade schools are not teaching critical race theory. Critical race theory is an elective in law school that very few schools even use in the first place. But if you're talking about kids learning actual history, it needs to be done. One of the reasons why I am very hard against anybody, whether they look like me or anybody else that practices anti Semitism, is because in high school, I had a teacher who taught an unvarnished, raw class about 1920s to 1940s Germany. The full unvarnished Holocaust. How it was legal, everything they did. How Hitler got elected, all the strategic stuff. And I can still vividly see the reels that he showed of the camps. And he got in trouble for it for a bit because parents didn't want their kids seeing something that horrific, but it stuck with me. And because it stuck with me, I realized I don't want to see something like that happen again. Kids need to understand that the world is not this exceptionalism, that not everybody's the hero, and that stuff can legally happen that is awful to people. If they don't understand it, how are they going to stop it? They won't, because they won't understand the severity of the situation. And I can't believe that I have to say this, but we're fighting to teach this basic history now because people want to use CRT as the new boogeyman to keep white supremacy in a stranglehold on our country. If you want change, you have to fight for it. If you want better legislation, you have to vote for it. And if you want kids who won't let our country devolve into that, if you want citizens that won't let our country devolve into that kind of stuff, which we very nearly did, because you can't tell me those Trump camps weren't committing atrocities, then we have to educate. It's funny how the news media is constantly showing those very loud, idiotic people who don't want to mask up, don't want to vaccinate their kids. They're not doing the interviews of parents like me who got my kid vaccinated as soon as possible. They don't care about stability. And we have been giving chaos agents way too much of our time, money, and ratings. Y'all need to cut that out. They are spoon feeding us garbage. We have been in the most stable times these last 9 months, despite everything going on with this pandemic. Yet, if you listen to the media narrative, we might as well have kept that idiot in charge. They loved his chaos. They didn't care the 650,000 people plus died under his watch unnecessarily. They didn't care about all the destabilization. They hope that his idiotic base, who are way too busy dying because they don't believe in vaccination or protecting themselves, will arm up and cause more idiocy like the insurrection. And to those of you still hoping that, like, Law and Order, what happened in January 6th is just going to be wrapped up really quickly, to those of you trying to press Mueller to tweet about what he's doing, grow the fuck up. Some of you are acting like kids in this. People who are doing their jobs don't have time to tweet about it to appease your nerves. There are plenty of evidence of all the idiots who went in to the Capitol on January 6th. The fools taped themselves. They thought they were doing a good thing. So y'all need to just shut up. Let the people who are in charge of the DOJ do their jobs. The idiots did make it a little bit easier, but the wheels of justice still have to turn. Some of you are so pressed about what's going on with Mueller. You're ignoring stuff that's going on a state-by-state basis. Some of you in your own damn home state. Ahmaud Arbery's jury is nearly all white. This man got lynched running in his own fucking neighborhood by some stupid bubba who thought he didn't belong there. And of course, Georgia lets us down again by having a damn near all-white jury. in a freaking case of lynching. Like, I don't need to be a historian, but I know enough history to know how that's probably going to end up for that poor man's family who was murdered by a bunch of fucking bigots. Kyle Rittenhouse. Once again, I'm not going to stop bringing up the fact that that young man with his mom crossed state line, murdered two protesters, and his judge is sitting there quoting Bible verses and talking about, we can't call those protesters that. We have to make it seem like they were in the wrong. This is the kind of shit that you should be focused on, because that judge shouldn't have a bench. The people who are allowing yet again another all-white jury to try a man who chased down another young man who was just jargon, who boxed him in with another truck and then shot him in his back. I'm sick of this. And I can get mad and just yell every Friday night about it, but I'm going to organize. On top of that, I am going to make sure that people in Ahmaud Arbery's neighborhood know, you want better justice, you need to elect better judicial officials. You need a DA who would have went after those men as soon as possible, not made excuses. But some of you want to fucking play games, and I am tired of coddling people's feelings on this. Because the reason why we're in this mess is because so many of you won't do your bare minimum. It don't take much to cast a ballot anymore. There's early voting. There are voting stations everywhere. And like I said, in many states, there are mail-in and absentee options. If you live on the West Coast in places like Oregon and Washington, they have, and I believe in California now too, full-on mail-in initiatives. Absolutely no reason. I would love to think so, respect, but I honestly can't get my hopes up about Kyle Rittenhouse. The fact that he was let out on bail after murdering two people, the fact that the right wing want to spin the narrative that he is a hero, the fact that they found a justice who is a wackadoo, I'm just hoping he gets jail time at all, and my hopes aren't high with this. He murdered two people. The only thing that I can see at this point is because they were two white men, that might play against him a bit more. But because the two white men were betraying white supremacy for daring to march in a Black Lives Matter protest, I don't know. And that's the sad part about this. The not feeling like justice is going to be served in either one of those cases of clear wrong. Ahmaud Arbery should still be here. Those two young men who were protesting should still be here, but they're not. They were murdered by hate. And we need better hate laws on the books because too many of these motherfuckers think it's okay. It was only a few months back that we lost 8 Asian lives to a motherfucker who was just having a bad day. Ran into different parlors and shot them up. I'm sick of them channeling this negative emotion because they don't know how to handle life, because they're so emotionally stunted, to murdering people. And we really can't even tackle the situation with our societal fuckery when it comes to white men and women because we're all just trying to survive this. And with a pandemic, with the effects of a disabled police force, with unsure economic security because going into a job and risking dying from COVID isn't happening for many of us, it is still messy. So I tell people, if you want things to get better, you need to have legislation on the books that not only helps us during times like this, but goes beyond the so-called handouts. And it's funny, there are always people that love to tease others about handouts, and that's all they've ever gotten. Some of these people have had a leg up since the get, but want to look down on everybody else who's struggling. I am so sick of those types. They have nothing but ire because, oh, you can't have nothing but me. You're just living off the government as they get subsidies, tax breaks, kickback, and all kinds of backdoor deals. I know because I was a bookkeeper. I seen a lot of shady financial things go on. And it's ridiculous. These people who's like, oh, welfare queens this and government that. If you can get money from the government, you better take it because it is not easy to get on those programs. And they make your life a living hell depending on your age, your income, your social status. And there are some of us that are trying to formulate a group so that we can work within the government and work with the government to understand that people who are on disability don't deserve to be penalized for having a family, don't deserve to be penalized for being married, but we can't even tackle those issues because there's so much fuckery going on. I can't stand the way people look down. Exactly. I don't even understand that, Beans. Between the stimulus packages that they got, between the corporate kickbacks that they got, because Orange Julius was just trotting out PBE money to any of his friends, it has been a freaking financial mess. But I feel more comfort right now with this current administration because our VP has a degree in economics. Joe Biden actually passed legislation. Their Build Back Better plan has so many strategically structural things towards education and economics that could help us. But they can't do it on their own because I will repeat what I said earlier in this cast. A president is not a dictator. They could put forward plans after plans, but if they can't get it through the House and Senate, if they can't make sure that their Supreme Court won't veto it, it doesn't matter what they put as an executive order. That's what stopped Cheeto from doing a lot more nefarious stuff. He got some really shady shit put in. And that's another thing. We have to roll back a lot of environmental, animal abusive stuff because of the stuff that Trump was able to sneak in. But to act like a president could just do whatever they want, we would all be dead if that was the case. So you got to remember, if you want better environmental protections, if you're a woman, your rights to be protected, if you're LGBT and just want to exist as an equal human citizenship without your gender identity and orientation, without who you are in a committed relationship, being on trial, depending on what state you are. If you want the ability to adopt and live your best life and raise kids, you need to vote. Nobody else can just give you those things. And you have seen that in the hands of people who are indoctrinated from the fucking cradle to believe that they're God's special children, that somehow their lack of melanin makes them better, even though they're freaking god awful. They're not going to vote for your best interest. So if you're marginalized and you're sick of it, you've got to organize. And I don't just mean organize in a protest. Protests happen when there is no other recourse. And some of you like to act like there is no other recourse. And all the energy that you put into your protest, y'all could be actually organizing rides to the polls for places that don't have mail-in, organizing actual voting initiatives because they are effective. I spent the last 4 years organizing, making sure people knew when, how, and if they couldn't get to the polls because after the pandemic dropped, how they could still vote because it matters. And some of the people that didn't think it was going to be affected ribbed me. Some of my friends, oh, you think it's going to matter? Trump's going to win again and all that. We said hello to President Biden, didn't we? And it's not always going to be a win. And that's what some of you need to get in your head too. Because some of you have a loss happen and you're like, well, see, I knew it didn't matter anyway. So you're just going to give up? That's it? Your favorite didn't win, so you don't want to do it anymore? Is that how you live your life? You couldn't last a day as a black person, especially a black woman. And I think that's the difference, the real heart of the difference between us and every other female group. We have had to have our own back for so long that don't matter if other groups vote like us. Y'all say vote like black women all you want. It don't super our head up. We're gonna keep doing what we do because we want better for everybody. Because we know, even though we're at the bottom of the pile, when things are better for everybody, we raise up too. That's just the reality of the situation. That is why we focus on our best interest. We don't have time to be like, well, I gotta be pure. I gotta do that. You might get some really loud, famous types that try that, but they ain't part of the 98% at all. Those types, they get their paycheck no matter what. So yeah, they can play around like, yeah, I don't know. I think I might stay home. The Jamel Hills of the situation, the Imani Grady's of the situation. Yeah, I'm name calling at this point because they have big platforms. And instead of informing people on what they could do to get the progress that they're bitching about being frustrated not getting, instead of organizing for votes and using their influence towards that, they would rather depress the vote. And you know what doesn't get us progress? When people stay the fuck home. Because unlike some of you people who like to play these kind of games, I know what's at stake when we don't have decent local and state representation. I'm not far removed. And I never want to get to a place where I feel far removed from people who can't even be in their own damn neighborhood without worrying about being shot in their back by somebody who's supposed to protect and serve. I'm not far removed from people living in rural areas either. Because let me tell you, all the shit you say about the Deep South, I didn't run into any kind of racist bullshit when I lived in Florida, South Carolina, except for one sign by some rickety ass store that I wasn't going to go in anyway, or North Carolina. I lived in the South for over 20 years. My most racist incidents happened in fucking New York City. So y'all need to stop with your preconceptions and your pre-notions. The South got plenty of issues. A lot of fucking twisted religious issues. A lot of issues. I'm not saying that there ain't no racism in the South. That would be a lie. But they don't try to decorate themselves as some kind of elite place where it doesn't happen because there's way too many people of different cultures. Just because you put a bunch of people of different cultures all in a concentrated area doesn't mean hate can't exist. Hate is a poison that no one's immune to. And it takes actual conscious work to not indulge in it. And nobody is 100% immune from any forms of bigotry, even self bigotry. Some of the things that I still reflect on is internalized misogyny that I have to deal with. The way I'm raising my son is affected by that because I was raised that belief of mom and female are caretakers. Boys need to be raised to get a job and stuff. And I'm trying to undo a lot of that cultural stuff that was drilled into me because I don't want to raise another man that thinks I got to put all this on a woman and I'm just going to trade her up for somebody younger. Because that's another thing that white people don't want to talk about. That just cultural standard of training men that a woman's value is only in her youth and her looks and how many babies you can get out of her. That shit's got to stop. If we had a society that valued you based on what you gave to life instead of, oh, that person looks this way, oh, that person's this gender or that gender, we would be so much better right now. How many people with potential never really got a chance because A, they were born into the supposed wrong class in this society, not enough money, not the right gender, not the right color. We have set ourselves back so far from this nonsense because it's easy to have that narrative that, oh, this person is less than. They'll never amount to anything. I watched this thing on YouTube the other day where this 14-year-old boy developed software that does surgery like a video game. Young black child. He's going to revolutionize surgery that I might have to have myself because it's on the uterine walls. And I think it's supposed to help for fibroids and stuff. This is the kind of potential that we should be elevating. But if we keep letting men like McConnell get their way, we keep letting things like what happened in Virginia happen, that's not going to happen. Because those people, they don't feel right when black kids who have the ability to learn and grow and make things better rise up. Or worse yet, they want them to assimilate towards them. And speaking of which, can y'all stop making Jacob Wall trend? Every time I forget that little dipshit exists, y'all start retweeting his idiocy. Stop it. Nobody wants to see what he has to say. And he only gets attention when y'all retweet his stuff. Him telling Jewish people that they need to assimilate because America's a Christian nation is just like me trying to say anything that's nonsensical. I can tell y'all the sky is pink. It doesn't mean the sky is fucking pink. He wants y'all angry and tweeting and retweeting his garbage. Stop amplifying his words. He's a garbage person, and his beliefs are not the core of our country. But y'all make it loud enough, and enough idiots start really going, well, yeah, it's got to be Christian nation. No, it's not. We do not have one common religion here because we couldn't have one common religion here. We have people who are atheists. We have people who are Gnostic. We have people who are Catholic, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Taoist. There are so many. And I am pagan. So I am sick of people amplifying bigotries just to say, oh, look how dumb he is. I can't believe he's saying this. Ignore him like his mama did. The only thing that kid ever did worth note, and the only note was to laugh at his dumbass, like Nelson from The Simpsons, was use his mama's number in a scheme. And I'm still hoping that the state of Michigan takes his ass to task for that robo threat call thing that he did here. Some of you be amplifying terrible, trying to get your likes and your hearts on social media. Stop amplifying that garbage. I am so tired of that ignorance, for real. He is just, and the funny thing is, I wish I'd saved those tweets from back in the day. Because it wasn't but 4 years ago that little Mr. Use My Mom's Phone Number, as I like to call him, was trying to play both sides, trying to get in with the resistance. And he kept reaching out to me. He followed me for a while too. And then I started reading his timeline. And I was like, you're really MAGA sounding? I don't want anything to do with you. He is a mess. Anything for attention. Trust and believe that this fool doesn't care about the right either. He just wants anything to make a name for himself. And he's garbage. So instead of retweeting Jacob Wall or any of those other right-wing nut jobs, let them twist in the void. Block them. Let them go to Parler if that's still a thing and circle jerk each other. We have to stop amplifying their nonsense. Because the only reason I even knew he was trending was because a lot of people who follow me were retweeting his nonsense. And then as I realized he was blocked and I was still seeing his stuff, I was like, the screen capping his stuff. Y'all are literally screenshotting and getting around those of us who blocked that man baby to show us what? We already knew he was ignorant, so that's why we didn't want to see him. And y'all do that with Brie cheese. Y'all do that with No Edges Candace. Stop giving these wannabe influencers attention. It is not worth it. It's not worth the spike to your blood pressure. It is not worth giving them amplification. They're going to get book deals because people think they're popular. Your hate response makes them popular, but you know what doesn't make them popular? Irrelevance. They don't get those clicks and views. You know what happens to them? They go into the dustbin where they belong. Nobody's going to call them up. Nobody's going to give them interviews. They're not relevant. So we need to play their game and ignore them. Stop amplifying them and amplify the Lauren Underwoods. You realize that I would be watching more. Welcome to the chat, Jessica S. Bell. Thank you. I would be watching more of these news channels if they had more competent people. But the last time I turned on MSNBC, which was, I think, last year, Michael Moore was on there constantly. I live in Michigan. Michael Moore does shit for the state. He will make a documentary about Flint, but he doesn't give a fuck about electing people who will actually get things done for Flint. Some of y'all will amplify the most loudest do nothing motherfuckers. Some of you amplifying Sean King, another grifty grifterson. He made his name using black torture porn. And now everybody thinks that he's this civil rights freedom fighter when all he does is make money off donations and buys his family and himself a big ass house. Y'all have funded his grift. He has done absolutely nothing for any of the communities he's supposedly speaking for. Yet you could be helping these communities yourself by organizing voter initiatives, getting them actual representatives that want to do for their community. Instead, you got homegirl who used to be a barback who tells people, well, I can see why some people don't want to get out there and vote. Because she thinks she's in a safe position. Her butt should have been on Instagram doing makeup tutorials, not in a fucking representative seat. And y'all got to stop playing around with this stuff. Y'all want to get on about Christian cinema with her freaking Target clothes and stuff like that. Do something about it. Organize. Get somebody who wants to run. You just want to bitch about her wasting a slot, but you don't want to do what you need to do to make sure she knows she's not going to be in that slot anymore. And no, the goal is not to replace her with an even worse Republican. That's the problem I have with Dems. Y'all think, oh, it'll teach her a lesson if she loses to the GOP. We all lose at that point. We need to collect ourselves, get it together, and win. And I don't mean fight, because that's another piece of narrative that people keep throwing around here. I want boring politicians who know how to legislate and negotiate with each other. I am done with that Street Fighter thing. If I want a Street Fighter, I watch mixed martial arts. If I want to see any kind of fighting, I like World Sumo. I used to watch wrestling. That's where I'll get my fighting. What I want in politics are adults who know how to be adults, who know how to legislate, who know how to negotiate legislation so that certain things can get passed and they can figure out which things can go to the wayside or which things can be held off till later. I want adults in the room, and welcome to the chat, Terry. It's just so tiring to see people continuously feed that negative narrative that, well, things aren't getting done, so I need to be apathetic. And I would love that, Jessica, but we still can't even respect each other as basic human beings. And until we stop raising generations to see people as different because of their gender or their looks and stuff, I can't get hopeful yet. I said it all the time. I would love to be in that position where I could really start a school. And I don't just mean a school for like elementary kids. I mean a school where people can just go and learn their passion at their time. Because one of my biggest peeves about our education system is that it is set for people to fail. We pit kids against each other. We grade them instead of really working with them to help them understand what they're learning. Kids who show a passion for certain things aren't nurtured in that passion unless their parent and teachers are both advocating for them. And in this current climate, you're lucky if you have teachers who could even have the time to advocate for your kids. I want a better system because we're not going to get better humans if we don't get a better system. And the current educational system is a one size fit all nightmare that has so many kids full of anxiety, unable to learn. I learn more now as an adult using apps like Duolingo. That's how I've been learning German. That's how I've been learning several different languages. I use the internet to research and study. I get a lot more historical stuff. I've been using it to help with some of the writing I've been doing. But could you imagine having a place where people could learn no matter what age range they are? Basic stuff. There are people my age in this day and age that don't even know how to basic cook, and they're ashamed of it. But if they could go to a place where they know they won't be judged, learn the basics with no strings attached, they don't have to pay for it. They just come in, show up, and get hands-on learning experience. Music wise, a place where they can learn music at their own pace, learn history, science, stuff that they were probably discouraged if they were my age and black. I wanted a history degree when I was younger. Totally discouraged from it because can't get a career as a black woman in that. Literally told that by the people who should have had my back. My son currently wants to be a marine biologist, and me and his team are working our asses off to make sure it happens because I am not going to repeat that cycle. But not everybody has that. And it's still hard because he is still up against a system that really does not help kids as it is, and especially kids with special needs. So if we want a system, we should have been like Star Trek. Heck, I was expecting us to be like the Jetsons by now. I thought we would start building up and have places in the sky, rely less on land, and have more technology based luxuries. But we're not there because our tech companies are too busy trying to be billionaires and look apart. We have too many people wanting to be famous and influencers instead of focusing on things that could better things for all of us. And it's because our society has become a win society. It doesn't matter if everybody is happy as long as you're winning. And until we get away from that mentality, it's going to be hard. One of my things, and I really don't want to give too much in the novel away, but one of the things that I wanted to harp upon in my book Axiom is I do truly believe that the fusion between organic life and technology is our future. I think it's the only way humans are going to keep surviving because biological wise, a fucking sickness can take us out. So one of the things I wanted to touch upon was how humans could potentially fuse with technology and create a new species of ourselves. But it doesn't come without problems because if you don't get to the core issues that we have as humans, even upgrading us, even if we are just sentient data that can be upgraded, if we don't get rid of the core baggage and viruses that we constantly have infecting us, which is bigotry and hatred and all of the insecurities that our society sets us up when they put us in a school with other kids and say, well, this kid is reading at this level. So we need to do this. And this kid should be reading at this level. And this and it's a mess. And it's a mess that we can change if we really wanted to. I know some people don't understand tribal stuff because a lot of portrayals of tribes and people who grew up in that, and even now, some of the groups that like the Senegalese. People don't understand how, in this day and age, with all the technology, how people could live like the Senegalese, where they don't deal with any of that stuff. They don't deal with outsiders. They are living their best lives. And you know why? Because they work together. Because a tribe is, for better intensive purposes, just a large family. They all work together. They all grow together. They do everything within the structure of their tribe. And one of the reasons why we are so fractured as it is because people said tribes are bad. People said all those people banding together, not believing the way I want them to believe, not looking the way I want them to look, bad. And because of that, we're still paying for those fractures. We're still paying for the damage done. And if we want to get that back, we're going to have to form new tribes of people who work together no matter what, who stick together, who learn together, who grow together, who raise people to see their own value so that no matter what people try to throw at you, it won't stick. Too many of us raise kids that worry about, oh, your peers, you got to be liked, you got to be this. I'm not raising my son like that. Maybe it's because of my mental stuff. I wasn't raised like that. I don't give a crap. And it's because I realize that a person will look you right in the face and say, "Oh, I love you. I'm your biggest fan. I'm your," and then in the next breath, oh, I can't stand them really. I hope to take them down the peg. We see that play out on social media every freaking day. How many people have followed so-called big name accounts only to jeer and cheer the moment that account steps in it or somebody's fighting with somebody else? If I've learned anything about our species is that so many of y'all wear a fake mask, and that's why I refuse to play those kind of games. I don't care if I'm popular and I don't care if I like. I like me. At the end of the day, and that's all that matters, and that is what I taught my son. That's why he doesn't bother with this online stuff. And some people are like, oh, he's a teenager. He should want that. He doesn't. And I'm not going to push it. I don't think people understand that, like everything, influence is like a drug. Once you start getting on that, that's all you want to think about. It overtakes your life. It's not worth it. Because the moment it goes the next route or south, you hit depression from it. Oh, people don't like me anymore. But if you don't care in the first place, you keep doing you, that is way better for your sanity than any kind of approval from people that you're probably not going to meet in the first place. So I really hope that if you watch this, whether you're here tonight, and I want to thank everybody who's here tonight in the chat, but if you're on my YouTube later on and seeing this, I'm not dinging you for wanting that influence. I'm not dinging you for wanting to be liked. A lot of us were raised towards that mentality. But your best bet is to like who you are, whether people like you or not, because if you don't, they're going to figure it out and you're going to be in for a lot of depression and hurt. And exactly, a lot of teenagers are just because it's a mess. Who wants to go on and be bullied both in school and online? Who wants the pressure of trying to be popular in that place and online? It's not worth it. So I don't pressure. My kids say he don't want to be bothered. I'm not going to push him towards it. I wish I had that wherewithal at times. I mean, as much as I like online, because really the only socialization that I'm doing currently, because I'm not trying to get sick, it can be a lot to take in, especially when grown ass people are fighting each other, especially when it's nothing but negativity half the time. I just take breaks. I'm just like, you know what? I don't need this. So I can understand why kiddo doesn't want to bother. And I can understand why a lot more teens don't either. We've got to stop making these things our only focus and like what we see in the mirror. Because when you have that solid foundation of your own self worth, no one can take that from you. And they'll try, but it won't matter because they're the ones seeking out trying to pull you down, not the other way around. But I'm going to get ready to wrap this up. I want to thank you so much. I can't believe an hour went by that quickly, but I will be back tomorrow with a Gen X Cynics cast with Axiom. We're going to be talking about binge watching stuff. We binge watch so much stuff. It's going to be an hour of, or a little bit more of gaming and geekery talk. And then I will be back next week with more social commentary and hopefully a lot less fuckery, y'all. I am so tired of only talking about negative things, but we have to keep these social issues prevalent and we have to keep reminding people to have your 4-year plan. Next year, I want everybody who's already making midterm predictions to be shut up big time. I'm already ready for August 2nd because that's when our midterm stuff starts rolling in. I stay on it. Have your 4-year plan and vote. Organize. I want to show people that we have really opened our eyes and learned our lessons. And if you're with me, make sure you're using that energy towards that. But I'm going to wrap it up, y'all. We're about to go watch that too. It's movie night. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Are you going to play the song? Or?
Am I going to play the song, silly? Of course I'm going to.
Because I was about to hit the stop button, but.
Not before I play the song.
Okay. Good night, y'all. Love you.